me to be the part of the Brahmaputra Literary Festival. It deeply saddens me to inform that we have almost reached the end of the literary festival. Nevertheless, the epilogue session will cover the topic pitfalls and pleasures of writing across culture. The aim of this session is to provide insight about writing difficulties as well as the joy of writing for aspiring authors and writers across different cultures. With limited knowledge on this topic and with an earnest yearning to know more, I welcome today our wonderful and celebrated panelist and moderator who will enlighten us on the topic pitfalls and pleasures of writing across culture. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause for our panelists. Our panelists for this session are people about whom the more I speak, the lesser it will be. Neil Grant, at various times of life, he has been an instrument sterilizer, a cook, a bricky laborer, a roof tile reclaimer, a carrot picker, a tree planter, but he has always been a writer. Ladies and gentlemen, our moderator, Neil Grant. Juan Sklar, a writer and a trainer, he is a trained playwright, actor, singer, and a clown. He has also worked as a screenwriter for popular and critically acclaimed TV shows that has received the most prestigious award. Hubert Haddad, a Franco-Tunisian poet, playwright, short story writer, and a novelist. Along with him, we have his translator, Caroline Datta Borua. Please give a big round of applause for her as well. Last but not the least, Gabia Grusete, an author and a curator. She has curated numerous arts projects specializing in the domain of public art. I request our moderator to proceed with the session, but before that, I would like to request everyone present here to keep their cell phone on silent mode. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that wonderful introduction. Welcome everybody to the hot tent. I hope everyone's awake after lunch. It's always a tricky one, the afternoon session. So we're gathered here to talk about writing other people's stories, and all the panellists here have done so, and I have myself, so I'm pretty interested in this whole topic. I mentioned this morning in the session I had with Juan about at the Brisbane Writers Festival in 2016, the American novelist Lionel Shriver did the keynote, and she veered a little bit from her topic and talked about cultural appropriation. And she said, I hope the concept of cultural appropriation is a passing fad. It was a pretty incendiary sort of comment and made a lot of people bridle, including the Australian, Sudanese Australian writer Yasmin Abdul-Majid, who actually walked out in protest. So it created a big furore in Australia and made things very difficult for writers to write into other cultures. And I think these things are part of our conversation that we have in the world today. It's an interesting one to have. One thing that Lionel Shriver did say... I
have already something to say about that.
Sorry?
I already have something to say.
Do you want to jump in?
I think cultural appropriation is a useless concept.
Okay.
I don't like it. I think that any kind of cultural dialogue or contamination or theft, it's okay. And we cannot stop it, we should not stop it. And it's usually right-winged conservatives who don't want cultural contamination coming from immigrants towards established cultures. And it's left-wing conservatives who don't want to have it the other way around. Like, we don't want the empire to come and impose your culture on us. And cultural appropriation seems like a concept to curate what kind of culture we can absorb from other country. And well, I don't know, maybe I just don't like political correctness, or maybe I'm just outdated. Maybe I'm just a bad person. But
I don't think so.
I think that as long as you're not making fun and you're not being offensive, it's okay to use whatever things you like from another culture to make your life better.
Okay. Hubert, would you like to comment on that?
Je n'ai pas encore tout à fait saisi la question. Enfin,
I was just talking about Lionel Schreiber and her idea that it's okay to appropriate things from other cultures.
Oui, la culture n'a jamais été isolée. Une culture isolée n'existe pas. Il n'y a pas une culture qui soit une entité, une monade fermée.
An isolated culture doesn't exist, and it cannot exist also. So.
La culture, en soi, c'est le croisement, c'est le tissage, c'est le métissage.
The weaving
Il n'y a pas de culture génétiquement pure.
There is no culture who is genetically pure.
Parce que la culture n'a rien à voir avec la génétique, déjà.
Culture is not something to do with genetic.
Et donc, tout est... Lévi-Strauss, l'anthropologue qui est parti, qui a fait rupture un petit peu avec une idéologie antérieure qui était une idéologie d'exclusion, une idéologie raciale au fond.
Lévi-Strauss broke a bit. He was an anthropologist. He broke the concept of race.
Il a vu il a travaillé avec les sociétés isolées, les tribus isolées en Afrique, dans d'autres contrées en Amérique du Sud.
He worked with isolated tribes in Africa and also in South America.
Que plus une tribu, une entité reste enfermée sur elle-même, et moins sa culture est développée. Mais lorsqu'il y a des liens, lorsqu'il y a des relations, la culture est beaucoup plus développée. C'est comme ça probablement avec ce rapport amplificateur que un certain nombre de tribus dans la jungle d'Amérique du Sud, des Andes, ont produit des cultures extraordinaires. La culture inca, aztèque, toltèque, des choses. La culture vient de l'échange, du partage, de cette démultiplication-là.
Culture comes from exchange, and we were talking about Lévi-Strauss, and when he did his research, he found that the tribes who were not interacting with other tribes, their culture was less rich, and the tribes that were interacting a lot with other tribes, their culture was very rich. So.
Et le paradoxe, c'est que ce n'est pas forcément lié. L'histoire est faite de bouleversements, est faite d'invasions, est faite de guerres. Et le paradoxe, c'est que le pire implique l'expansion culturelle. Et alors il y a deux choses. Il y a cette réalité, et la deuxième, c'est l'impérialisme colonial, où on s'approprie une culture à des fins criminelles. Ça, c'est autre chose.
And there is also the paradox, like when you have wars, often it's also creating richer cultures, and also imperialism. Imperialist colonialism is also a fact that the negative point is to appropriate a culture in order to kill and to destroy, to gain, appropriate, make it its own in order to destroy it.
So, this point here, So basically, that cultures can be absorbed, especially during wars, and we share ideas freely across cultures. I think with cultural appropriation, it's more of that post-colonial idea that we're stealing something in some way, using it as our own.
Mais d'un point de vue positif, un exemple parmi mille autres, l'Europe de la Renaissance et l'Europe des Lumières, pour prendre l'Europe. Et l'Europe s'est faite, la civilisation occidentale européenne s'est faite sur le plan vraiment de la pensée, de la littérature, grâce à la traduction. 80% des apports culturels en Europe se sont faits grâce à la traduction.
80% of the cultural approach in Europe was done through translation.
La traduction, tout simplement la traduction.
Simply by translation.
Et la traduction qui est passée évidemment par la Méditerranée, un exemple qui me plaît beaucoup, parce que moi j'ai beaucoup de mal avec les langues, je sais lire un peu l'anglais, je sais l'hébreu un petit peu, mais j'ai beaucoup de mal. Une grande référence pour nous tous sur un plan de la culture universelle, c'est Shakespeare.
A big reference for all of us here is Shakespeare.
Shakespeare ne connaissait que sa langue.
Shakespeare only knew his language.
Pas le grec, pas le latin, il connaissait rien.
Know Greek, Latin.
Mais toutes ces pièces romaines, ces grandes pièces
But all his play, Roman play,
la source
of it,
c'est un grand traducteur français, Jacques Amiot.
Is a big
Jacques
French
Amiot
translator,
au XVIe siècle, c'est un contemporain de Montaigne.
It was a contemporary of Montaigne in the 16th century.
Par Montaigne parce que les traducteurs étaient considérés comme des écrivains à part entière, de grands écrivains. La preuve, c'est que
were considered as a writer.
À contrario, beaucoup d'écrivains étaient des plagiaires, étaient au fond des traducteurs, des plagiaires, qui recopiaient avec un peu de style. Par exemple, La Fontaine, il a plagié Ésope, Phèdre, des auteurs antiques. Bon, on revient à Shakespeare.
Coming back to Shakespeare.
Shakespeare ne connaissait pas le français, mais il y a une très bonne traduction de Jacques Amiot en anglais.
So Shakespeare didn't know French, but there was like a very good translation.
Traduction de Plutarque. Et grâce à ces traductions, Shakespeare, ces pièces romaines. Donc c'est vraiment très important.
Okay, thank you. So Garabia, your novel, is it Unfulfilled, the novel that takes place throughout... Okay, sorry, I got one wrong. What things did you experience as far as writing into, what was probably 5 other cultures, was it? So it was Malaysia, Hong Kong, anyway.
So it starts in New York with a 29-year-old guy waking up and realizing that his life is, he's a social media star, and he takes a picture of an empty street of New York, posts it online, and realizes he's completely alone and has no idea what's going on in his life. And then he does what every confused white person does: it travels to Southeast Asia, to Bangkok. And then he travels around. So my book, I think there's 2 dimensions. One is my experience living in Malaysia and being an outsider, and another is what it means to be a Lithuanian and what is a post-Soviet identity, because I live a very different life than my parents did, because I was born in 1987, so that was still Soviet Union, and then it became independent country, and now it's part of European Union, and the 2 countries that my parents lived and I live are completely different. So my main character traveling to Southeast Asia is sort of trying to escape the past and find a new identity. And in a way, the conflict is that even though I really write about Bangkok and I make horrible jokes about Malaysia, I really did go overboard with offensive. But the joke is really not on the culture I write about. It's about my characters. They are ignorant, they have no idea what's going on, and they don't care about things. So the way I approached, I was mostly interested in the relationship between these two very different worlds, and in a way, I also agree with Ran that cultural appropriation is people trying to silence, and it's more about power relationships on who has the power to tell the story. And one of the ways I also approach it in my novel, the three ignorant white guys decide that since they are too bored to be tourists, they will do documentaries on Malaysia. And they have no clue what Malaysia is, or what Islam is, or what's the post-colonial history of a country. But they decide that nonetheless, they are well equipped to do that. And they actually do a documentary on murder of Autuntuya Shoibu. And they are quite successful because they deliver what the audience wants, and they want to see this absolutely beautiful young woman being murdered. So it has this drama and...
Who's the audience? So as far as their audience?
The audience, I talk about a quite particular audience that my characters reach, but I guess it sort of transcends the boundaries of a novel. So it's more what we would call well-educated Western world, and the type of the rise of BuzzFeed and Vice and all these kind of documentaries that claim some authenticity, but it's really packaged suffering and drama that...
So it's like a social media community, rather than,
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting, and there's no answer, it's more a relationship between...
Mais cependant, une culture est plus forte qu'un commentaire, qu'une appropriation d'un individu. Elle est infiniment plus forte. Mais il y a des choses très drôles. Il y a un... peut-être que ce sera plus facile. Oui, voilà. Ce que je voulais dire, c'est qu'une culture en soi, c'est un univers.
A culture is a universe. It's
un artiste, un écrivain, un géographe, un historien, il apporte un point de vue qui peut être fallacieux.
He might have a point of view which might be wrong.
Qui peut à l'occasion faire un peu de mal. Mais la culture d'un pays, elle est infiniment plus puissante.
But the culture of the country is more than that, it's more powerful.
Et puis, d'une certaine manière, on fait usage de... il y a des interpénétrations, on fait usage, on réinvente, il y a eu la mode de l'orientalisme.
There was a fashion of Orientalism at one point.
Mais l'orientalisme n'a rien à voir avec l'Orient, c'est autre chose.
But the Orientalist movement has nothing to do with the Orient.
C'est quelque chose d'autre qui appartient plutôt à l'Occident. Il y a au XVIIIe siècle, il y avait un individu, on ne sait pas d'où il sortait, qui avait beaucoup de prestance, qui s'appelait Salman Azar.
One person, Salman Azar, who was very charismatic.
Il a dit qu'il avait vécu 20 ans à Formose, l'île de Formose.
He said he had lived for 20 years
in Angleterre.
En
Angleterre, vous ne connaissez pas, personne n'était allé encore à Formose.
So nobody knew in UK.
Il a écrit un lexique et une grammaire du formosien.
He wrote a book and the grammar of Formosia.
Il a enseigné à l'université de Formosien. Il a créé une sorte d'encyclopédie et d'histoire avec tous les mœurs, en faisant des cartes géographiques, en expliquant les mœurs qui étaient extrêmement cruelles d'ailleurs. Il a fait tout le monde pensait que c'était le grand maître, le seul.
Everybody thought he was the master of
La sommité sur le sujet, puisque personne
the topic.
n'était. C'était une invention totale.
It was a pure invention.
Pendant un siècle,
For one century,
les Anglais
English people
ont pris au pied de la lettre l'encyclopédie.
this
Et il y avait même une université qui enseignait le formosien, qui était une invention totale de Salmanazar.
And one university was teaching the Formosian language, which was a pure invention of Salmanazar.
Voilà, c'est une folie, une sorte de folie culturelle qui devient en soi une œuvre d'art absurde.
It was like a crazy cultural idea, but which became in itself a piece of art.
Et chacun, quand il revient d'un pays,
But I'm repeating what he's saying. Okay.
Quand,
Ah, donc, je passe
oui. Quand on revient d'un pays, on vient avec plein d'idées, et au fond on invente l'endroit d'où on vient. Et quand on écrit un livre sur un voyage, sur un pays, c'est parcellaire. C'est pas, la subjectivité est partout.
Subjectivity is everywhere. When you come back from a country, you'll get something out of it, but not everybody will get the same out of it. So.
Yeah, not always the thing you go for. And I think that's something you could probably talk about. One, in your novel, We Will Never Be in India. Talk about your character goes to comes to the subcontinent, comes to India. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? And his transition?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty safe from the accusation of cultural appropriation because my character is pretty similar to what Gabriel was saying, because he's an idiot and he's annoying and he hates India in the beginning. He eventually grows up and develops a connection, but he's not trying to get it right, to capture the essence of India. India it's not a country, it's a subcontinent, it's a collection of cultures and languages. And so I think cultural appropriation, that accusation works better for someone who's trying to understand or really penetrate a culture. My character starts from the beginning point is I cannot understand this, I don't like this, but I'm here. And he stays in India and he develops a connection, but in no point of the story he's trying to tell the Indian story for the Indians. He's not even fighting with India, he's just fighting with the backpackers and those who are trying to find enlightenment in India and walk barefoot through Rishikesh.
So you're really taking the piss out of the tourists rather than the country itself. We're trying to tell the Indian story. You're trying to tell a story of a Western guy within...
Exactly.
Yeah.
So India is just a mirror for him. He's not trying to explain India.
Yeah.
That would be a stupid thing to try to do.
Yeah. So I guess, can we turn now to the pleasurable? So cultural appropriation, we agree it's a bad concept. Or maybe a faulty concept. What about the pleasures that you got from, and I'll start with you again, from writing your novel, like writing about India? What was the best thing, the nicest thing about it?
Well, the section is called Pitfalls and Pleasures, and for me the pleasure is the pitfall. The fact that you have an external difficult that it's useful to express the inner state of the character. My character is angry at India, angry at Delhi, angry at the backpackers, and that's saying much more about him and his anger than what he's saying about the backpackers or India. So the cultural clash, it's a tool to express inner states, and in the end that's what we are really concerned about. Like what's going on with feelings. So I like to write across cultures because it gives me a tool to express anger, disappointment, and eventually love.
Yeah, okay. And you were saying it's very closely aligned to yourself, this character, is that?
Yes. His name is his name is
No more comment.
His name is Jano.
Okay.
Jano is Roman two-faced god. That's January's name after him.
Yeah.
And the novel is based on my travel log, on my travel diary. It then became fiction, but yeah, it departs from my own experiences in India.
Okay.
But I don't stand for his opinions in that book.
And I think you were saying too, Ravi, you don't stand for the opinions of your idiot characters, is that right? Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience of writing, maybe the good things and the positive things that came out of your writing of your novel?
Well, yes, my character is an idiot as well.
We love idiot characters.
But my character does not consider himself an idiot. He's handsome, good-looking, and he really thinks that absolutely everyone else is an idiot. Except him. So I guess the pleasures was that I grew up in a really homogeneous society. In Lithuania, pretty much everyone looks like me. Like everyone's the same. In a way that we had really similar childhoods, and 90s in Vilnius was crazy and wild. There was change of the systems, and we were drinking beer when we were 12 and smoking around the corner, and it was a very strange time to grow up. But only after I left my country, I started to learn on concepts of race and any differences, because I was very much used that everyone has blue eyes, really, or maybe brown, but I didn't even see that either through books or movies. So I think this passion for traveling that I have is very much compensating for all the things that I feel like I missed out in my childhood and trying to understand myself. So I think that was the biggest pleasure, me growing as a person. And I guess the biggest pleasure was I learned to make fun of myself. And I don't really take myself so seriously. And I had this, my best friend who's ethnically Chinese Malaysian, and she was like, Gabby, why do white people buy this expensive couscous? And I'm like, that's what we do. White people love expensive couscous. It's, you know, it's our culture. And we had all these jokes about how she's like, you know, why would white people like to take out the head of Buddha and put it in their houses? Why do they decapitate Buddhas all the time? And I'm like, you know what? It's in our culture. So I think that was the biggest pleasure.
It is kind of hilarious. I think that Idiot Abroad thing, when it was done in the English TV series, The Idiot Abroad, I think it's a common theme is to lampoon the stranger in a strange land sort of thing. It's a pretty great thing.
Yeah, in my case, I have the same thing. I'm fourth generation Argentinian. All my friends look like me, have the same haircuts. Some of them have the same voice as me. Our mothers confuse us on the telephone. And so traveling gives me this clash and this outsider look and perspective that enriches culture, which I think that Hubert, I mean, he has such a different train of life that, I mean, I don't know how traveling works in his perspective. I mean, he was born in Tunisia, then had to learn French, and so I would like to know how does that clash of cultures and traveling work in your writing?
Pour moi, il n'y a pas de clash. Je voyage et je suis avec les gens, a
For
priori.
me, there is no clash. I travel and I'm with people.
Et je ne vois pas de différence humaine.
I don't see any difference in
À
human.
partir du moment où j'arrive à me faire comprendre, mais si je n'arrive pas à me faire comprendre, j'arrive à sympathiser quand même, à être en harmonie.
When I can make myself understand, that's great, but even if I cannot manage to be friends with people.
Il n'empêche que j'ai pas mal voyagé avec des projets littéraires,
I traveled a lot with
avec une idée derrière la tête.
literary projects in my head.
Par exemple, il y a longtemps que je voulais écrire un roman sur les enfants soldats.
So for a long time I wanted to write a novel on a soldier, with a children's soldier.
L'occasion s'est présentée que j'allais au Rwanda
So then I was invited to Rwanda
et au Congo.
and Congo.
Et au Rwanda, j'ai été confronté à quelque chose qui est pour moi et pour tout le monde tellement terrible.
In
que
Rwanda I saw some such terrible things.
les gens avec qui je parlais, les Tutsis,
People with who I was talking to see.
la mise en scène du génocide avec les corps dans les églises qui sont restés tels quels.
The genocide with the bodies in churches that stayed like that.
Et je ne pouvais plus.
I could not take it anymore.
Je me souvenais d'un voyage très jeune du côté de l'Afghanistan avant toutes les guerres. Et j'ai situé mon roman en Afghanistan. Alors que j'ai situé ce roman sur les enfants soldats en Afghanistan. Et ça m'est souvent arrivé d'être obligé, d'être contraint de déplacer.
So I moved my story to Afghanistan.
Mais il y avait un voyage qui me tenait à cœur, une légende. C'est souvent à partir d'une légende qu'on écrit un
So
roman.
there was a legend
Parce qu'il y a des légendes qui sont
which I liked a lot. Some legends are so
fortes et prégnantes.
powerful.
On se dit, il doit y avoir vérité.
So one thought there must be something true behind that.
En l'occurrence, ce que je prenais pour une légende n'est pas une légende, c'était la vérité. C'est historique. Je suis parti en Inde,
So I came to
il y a
India
12 ans, je crois,
12 years back
en Inde du Sud,
in the south of India
avec un sujet, avec un roman, une idée de roman.
with an idea in my head for a novel.
Mais surtout avec cette rêverie de retrouver un royaume disparu.
With this dream to find a kingdom that had disappeared
Au Kerala,
in Kerala,
au nord de Kochi,
in the north of Cochin.
il y aurait eu, et il y a probablement eu, un vrai
There
royaume
was a kingdom
qui était une concession faite par le Maharaja,
that was given by the
au
Maharaja
Xe siècle,
in the 10th century
sur la base de populations réfugiées là, juives,
for refugees, Jews.
venant de Palestine,
They came from
venant
Palestine.
du Moyen-Orient, après la chute du premier temple,
And,
Salomon,
after the fall of the first Solomon temple,
après la chute du second temple, temps de Titus,
after the fall of the second temple
après
during Titus,
après l'exil des Juifs séfarades après l'Inquisition en Espagne, au Portugal, et les diverses persécutions, beaucoup de Juifs se sont retrouvés
after many
Kerala.
persecutions, many Jews ended in Kerala,
dans ce royaume de Krangana.
in this kingdom of Krangana.
Et ces gens-là étaient acceptés, accueillis à bras ouverts.
And these people were welcomed with open arms.
Et ils se sont insérés complètement dans la culture indienne,
And they got completely assimilated in the culture,
dans la manière de s'habiller, dans la nourriture.
in the way they ate, in the way they dressed,
Sauf que leur Dieu, c'était un avatar, Jéhovah,
except that their God was Jehovah.
c'était un avatar de Brahma,
It was an avatar of Brahma,
le Dieu des dieux, le Dieu de la guerre.
the God of war.
Et il y a des témoignages qu'on peut trouver à Kochi, dans la synagogue des Pardesi.
So we can still find some trace of it in the synagogue of Bardessi.
C'est ce qu'on appelle la synagogue bleue. C'est un très bel endroit.
It's what is called the Blue Synagogue.
Il n'y a plus que des vieillards.
Beautiful place where only very old people remained.
En Inde, en Inde du Sud, au Kerala, en Inde en général,
In India in general,
les Juifs n'ont jamais été persécutés.
Jews were never persecuted.
Sauf par les Portugais quand ils sont venus.
Except by the Portuguese when they came.
Ils sont venus avec l'Inquisition,
They came
ils ont
with
fait quelques carnages, ils ont détruit la Bible, la Torah.
They destroyed the Torah.
Très vite après, ce sont les Hollandais qui sont venus et ils ont réparé les choses.
Then the Dutch came and they repaired things.
Alors moi j'ai imaginé un vieux musicien aveugle.
So I imagined a very old blind musician.
Qui connaît la musique klezmer de Pologne, puisqu'il vient de Pologne. Il est vieux, il n'en peut plus de ce qui se passe en Israël.
He's fed up with what's happening in Israel.
Il est hostile à ce conflit.
He's hostile to this conflict.
Et il décide de partir,
And he decides
de
to
s'en
go.
aller. Il est invité pour un concert de musique carnatique.
He's invited for a concert of music,
Carnatic à Chennai.
Carnatic music in Chennai,
Et là, avec une interprète, une jeune femme
with a young interpreter
qui ne veut pas le laisser seul.
who doesn't want to leave him alone.
Ils prennent une vieille voiture
They take
et ils vont
off
traverser,
in an old
ils vont aller à
car.
Pondichéry.
They
Le
come to
roman s'appelle
Pondicherry, they cross and they reach
Le
Pondicherry.
roman s'appelle Première neige sur Pondichéry.
The novel is called First Snow on Pondicherry.
Comme vous savez, il neige beaucoup à Pondichéry.
Like you all know, it snows a lot in Pondicherry.
Et puis, ils vont traverser les Ghats occidentaux
And so they cross the Ghat
et se retrouver au Kerala.
and they find themselves in Kerala.
Et il y a une tempête au Kerala.
And there is a storm.
Et dans la synagogue bleue,
And in the Blue Synagogue,
les 9 vieillards ont besoin d'un dixième. Parce qu'on ne peut pas faire une grande prière sans être 10.
the 9 of old people need a 10th person, so to make the great prayer you need 10 people.
Ils lui demandent à ce pauvre aveugle
So they ask the blind
d'être
man
le dixième, il ne veut pas.
to be the 10th person, but he refuses.
Mais à la fin, il va accepter.
But at the end he'll accept,
Et pour le remercier,
and to thank him,
chacun des 9 vieillards va lui raconter
each of the 9 people will tell
l'histoire
the story,
mythique du royaume de Kangana.
the mystical story of Kangana, the kingdom of Kangana.
Alors, cela pour dire simplement
So all that to simply say
tout le chemin
that
du
the
roman, je l'ai fait moi.
I made it
Je
also
l'ai fait seul.
physically.
Je suis allé dans tous les endroits.
I did it alone.
Et voilà.
I went to all the places.
Et j'étais là et je rêvais mon roman.
I was there and I was dreaming my
J'étais
novel.
avec mon vieux musicien aveugle.
I was with my old blind musician
Et je rencontrais les gens.
and I was meeting people.
Et cela, ce roman, c'est pour essayer de mettre en relation le judaïsme antique avec l'hindouisme. Il y a des rapprochements extraordinaires.
So this was also to try to put in relation the Judaism and the Hinduism, because there is a lot of cross connection.
Okay, thank you. Grabia, you said before your protagonist in your novel, or your protagonists, filmmakers, were holding up a mirror to themselves. And what did you learn about your experience of writing about other countries? How did that mirror sort of I don't know, what did it do to your writing and your way of looking at the world?
When my book first came out in Lithuania, people were really confused because the book is not about Lithuania. So everyone was like, so I don't know, why would a Lithuanian writer write about something that's not Lithuanian? And it was a very interesting conversation with literary critics and the audience, because apparently I reached this taboo of not writing in a way that expected of me. And another thing that was not expected is that I write about people's lives that in Lithuanian literary tradition are very, basically my characters are upper class, wealthy, obnoxious people that really don't care about anything except themselves and how well we look on Instagram picture. And for most of literary critiques, that was immoral to write about these people, because as a writer you're supposed to write about people who are suffering, people who are struggling, people who are trying to make a living, and people who need a voice. And so in a way what I learned writing, I basically learned what Lithuanian literary canons are and what you can write about.
And you got shot with it.
Yeah. And then the other thing was that a few of the people came up to me and asked me, is the character Stasi Shultoka is me? And I'm like, do I really look so horrible? And then at some point in a party, a guy came up to me and he's like, you know, I read a book, and this guy, I really feel like him. And I was like, ooh, you got problems.
You didn't marry him, did you?
No. So, I don't know, like, to just answer this question is that I learned more about my own country, and all the questions and discussions that came out in Lithuania after my book was published really sort of opened up kind of like these constraints that supposedly you should write about this and that, and all novels supposed to be psychological novels that deeply talk about characters' inner feelings, and I follow more of like Bret Easton Ellis, who just described what happens on the surface. And so I learned what Lithuania is and what Lithuania isn't, and then I feel it's like a journey to go and find my own identity as a Lithuanian through my writing.
Yeah.
So I guess it wasn't even the other cultures that I learned so much, but still it's about me.
Could you have written that novel without going outside Lithuania, like just researching on the internet, for instance?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is it about the Lithuanian psyche, and like you talked about the canon of Lithuanian literature? Is it about the psyche of Lithuanians somehow?
I think so. It's about being born in a very small country. Basically, Lithuania is only 3 million people, so in a way, it's smaller than Assam. And it's trying to break out of that. Not even that the place is small geographically, but it's small culturally, and everyone is pretty much doing the same thing. So in order to find my own voice, I had to leave, and I had to look for other ways. And I've been away for 12 years. And I moved back to Lithuania a year ago, and it still feels more foreign than being in Malaysia, being in New York. So I feel pretty at home in New York, and I sometimes struggle with my own city. So I think it's a very difficult cultural identity of being born in such a fast-changing environment.
Yeah, definitely. How was your book received in Argentina? Like, what did Argentinians think about both those who'd been to India and those who hadn't?
I was expecting all the yoginis and yoga lovers to hate me, but I discovered that's my market. It was amazing. Like,
they don't get it. They don't get
it. They do.
Oh, they do.
And actually, I underestimated them.
Yeah.
And I thought all the spiritual seekers that come to India would hate my book, but they hate the character and not the book.
they're quite smart readers then. They can make the separation between the character and author, right?
and they read the book properly, properly in the sense that they understood that what I'm saying and what the book is saying, it's not what he's saying in the first 100 pages. And now, like my Instagram, it's flooded with yoga instructors, and also it was read by a couple of influencers from that medium, yoga tarot readers, travelers that travel around India. And so now it's the book that they give to you when you say, I'm going to travel to India, take this one.
No longer The Lonely Planet?
Not The Lonely Planet, and not other novels like Diary of a Yogi, or like more spiritual books. It's like, take this one. If you still want to go to India after this book, India is for you. So it was very well received, and much better received.
Better reception?
Better reception than I expected.
Yeah. So we talked off mic about if it was translated in Indian, translated into English, and it came to India. How would you feel about that?
Well, before coming to India, I thought that they would hate me. But now now that I start talking about the book with Indians and Indian writers, and all get the same, like what happened today with another session with Amarnath, saying, yeah, okay, you can say horrible things about India because India has horrible things. It's okay. And then, of course, if you only said horrible things, then you would have a stupid book. But if you can say, and you can express the whole array of experiences that India gave you, from the smell, the noise, the crowds, and violence against women, to friendship, love, understanding, and all the interesting, powerful things India gave me, well, that's a more interesting book. Who wants to read a book that's all praise about India? That's Lonely Planet.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
I mean, if you want to read a book that's all most likely Indians are gonna hate the character and the book in the first.
But that's what you want, right?
Yeah.
You want them to hate it, so they love it.
But then, if the book is good enough, it's gonna be addictive, and you will not let it go, and you will go to the end, where something else, which is not enlightenment, and it's not discovering your inner self, and not walking barefoot through Rishikesh.
Which you don't recommend.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Put some sleepers at least.
I once I left my sandals outside the Taj Mahal, and when I came back it was late in the evening and someone had taken them. And there was another pair there which looked even worse than my ones. And I didn't want to take them in case they were someone else's. So I walked home in Agra.
That's hardcore.
It was not pretty. I wasn't trying to be like a sadhu, but yeah, it was something else. I did wash my feet when I got home. So yeah. So Uber, do you want to talk a little bit about you wrote a book called Palestine? Would you like to talk a little bit about that and your experience briefly on writing that outside of the Palestinian culture?
J'ai mis beaucoup de temps. Je suis désolé parce que là, on s'amuse bien et c'est très sympathique. Tandis que Palestine, c'est quand même une histoire un peu triste.
So I'm sorry because it's quite a sad story. So now we are having a good time and a good laugh, but the story is very sad.
J'ai écrit une histoire plus drôle. C'est Théorie de la vilaine petite fille où je me suis interrogé sur je suis aux États-Unis, il y a un phénomène extraordinaire, c'est le spiritisme.
About spiritism in the United States.
Et là j'ai écrit un
roman. It's the story of Theory of the Naughty Girl.
Oui, la théorie de la vilaine petite fille. Et il y avait 3 petites filles, des gamines. Je reviens sur Palestine tout de suite.
There were 3 little girls. I'm going to talk about Palestine.
3 petites filles de 10 ans à 12 ans qui ont bouleversé l'Amérique en 1840.
In
Entre 1840 et
1840,
1870.
3 little girls from 10 to 12,
Elles ont décidé, dans une maison soi-disant hantée de l'État de New York, il y avait des bruits bizarres, d'interroger les esprits.
they decided to, supposedly in a haunted house, they decided to interrogate the spirits.
On a voulu les brûler.
The people wanted to burn them,
Et puis à la fin,
and at the end,
tout le monde est devenu spirit. Il y avait des centaines, des milliers de médiums qui traversaient l'Amérique.
at the end, lots of psychic people came to crossing the states to reach that place.
L'Amérique, c'est le puritanisme plus l'argent. Et ça parlait aux deux. Et toute l'Amérique est devenue donc spiritiste. Et ces gamines sont devenues des femmes très riches.
So they grew up to be very rich women.
Et bref, mon livre est paru là-bas, il a eu un certain succès, sauf que je suis devenu la bête noire des spirites, parce que c'est une vraie église là-bas.
So my book met with a certain success there, except that I was the hated person of the spiritualism world.
On ne va pas toujours dans le sens du poil.
So you don't always go in the way people think.
Quant à mon roman Palestine,
Like for Palestine,
il a été traduit dans 12 ou 13 langues,
it was translated in 13 languages,
mais pas en Israël.
but not in Israel.
Parce que c'est pas un roman polémique.
It's not to create a polemic.
J'ai essayé de réfléchir sur ce conflit qui n'en finit pas
But I try to think about this war
à
that is
travers une fiction.
not finishing through a novel.
À travers
Through a novel.
Sorry to interrupt for 1 minute. Do you want to talk about your main character, your protagonist, and what their background is? Protagonist.
Voulez-vous parler de vos personnages et des caractères principaux?
Oui, les personnages. Il y a deux personnages principaux. Il y a un certain nombre de personnages, mais il y en a surtout un qui n'apparaît pas, qui est en creux, qui est un frère.
The one which is not appearing too much, he's a brother.
Michael.
Michael.
On voit son nom.
Michael.
On voit les lieux où il a vécu, mais il n'apparaît pas.
We see his name, we see the places where he lived, but he doesn't show up.
Quand il avait 20 ans, il est parti.
He left when he
Dans un
was
kibbutz.
20 in a kibbutz.
Il a milité.
He was a militant.
Il était peintre, artiste
He
peintre.
was a
Il n'en pouvait plus de cette vie-là. Il est allé à Jérusalem.
He was fed up with this life and he went to
Il a enseigné
Jerusalem.
aux Beaux-Arts à Jérusalem. Il a fait des expositions.
He taught art in Jerusalem, he did some exhibition,
Et puis il a milité avec les libertaires.
and he was a militant
Il a milité pour la paix
for the freedom, for peace with Palestine.
Et évidemment, ça a entraîné chez lui un certain nombre de ruptures, puisqu'il a refusé de faire son service militaire.
So he decided to refuse to do his military service.
Il a été interné à cause de ça.
So he was jailed
À la
because
fin,
of
il est
that.
parti vivre dans une cabane dans les oliveraies de l'autre côté de Jérusalem-Est.
At the end, he decides to live in a hut in the east of Jerusalem.
Et dans cette cabane, il a peint. Il a continué à peindre.
So there he continued
Et il
painting.
n'y avait rien dans la cabane.
There was nothing there.
Il y avait un serpent venimeux
There was
qui était là et avec lequel il vivait en bonne entente.
There was a snake there with whom he was living in good harmony.
Puis un beau jour, il a coupé un morceau de la cabane.
So one day he cut
Parce qu'il est
one
trouvé
side
joli.
of the hut.
Il y avait des vermiculures. Vous savez, ça faisait pour lui, c'était son dernier tableau. Il l'a mis dans un carton à dessin.
So he put that in he find it beautiful and he kept it in a drawing box.
Il avait 35 ans. Hein.
He was 35 years old.
Il est revenu à Ménilmontant. Ménilmontant, c'est l'endroit où nous sommes venus de Tunisie.
So he was 35, then he came back to
Et
Ménilmontant,
puis il a acheté un fusil de chasse
and he bought a hunting gun
pour les sangliers. Et il
for,
s'est
to
arraché la
hunt
tête.
wild boar, and he blew his head.
Alors moi, j'ai mis 20 ans à pouvoir écrire Palestine,
So it took me 20 years to be able to write Palestine,
en essayant par le roman de mettre le doigt sur le scandale de cette guerre qui n'en finit pas.
trying to put my finger on this problem, on this never-ending war.
Et donc, évidemment, ce livre, il a été traduit en Afrique, il a été traduit un peu
So
partout.
this book was translated in Africa,
Toujours pas en Israël.
everywhere, but not in Israel.
Merci. Maintenant, je ne vais pas raconter l'histoire.
I won't tell the story, but
I think Israel might not want to have the mirror held up to them. Maybe it's a tricky thing. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for that. That's fantastic. I wonder if I know we're running out of time. If we can see if there are any questions from the audience. If you could, can we get a microphone up the back there? If you could just like deliver your question and to one of the panelists. Just say which panelist you'd like to go to.
Thank you for an interesting conversation. It's open to anyone on the road. I just wanted to ask that if you write across cultures, you don't have, you don't carry the burden of being right. You're free to be wrong. At the same time, you need to be very very careful in writing about other cultures, right? So how do you strike a balance between the two? Being free to write anything and at the same time being very, the need to be very careful about writing about other cultures. Striking the balance.
It is very, I think in the previous panel discussion someone asked about ethics of writing, and I think that still applies in a way that every one of us have our internal compass that tells us what is appropriate and what is not appropriate to write. So in my portrayal of Malaysia, I did write a lot of extremely offensive things, but these tend to be really true. And recently I won this award, Penang Book Prize, and I don't really care much about awards, but this was very personal to me because it was Malaysia recognizing my writing about Malaysia. So, and I went to award ceremonies before my flight, and I was really not expecting to win, and I was like so taken aback. But then one of the things the chairman of a committee said, that when he started reading my book, it was so painful that he had to stop and put it down for a while. After a while he would take it and read it, and he's like, how dare she? But okay, that's true, that's true, that's true. But how dare she? But you know, that's true, that happens every day. Yes. So in a way, I think once you follow your internal truth, and what you say is not, basically you don't say things because they are offensive. You say them because they happen, and it has a reason within the story and the plot line. I think, yeah, it's my answer.
No, I agree with her.
What she said. Is there anyone else?
Au demeurant, évidemment, ce monsieur qui vient de parler a raison. Il y a toute cette masse de la littérature coloniale, de romans, c'est abominable comment les peuples colonisés sont décrits, les mœurs sont décrits.
There is all this colonialist literature, which is horrible. That to see how the people are described.
Et c'était un raz-de-marée dès les années 1840 jusqu'aux années 1950.
Until 1950.
Et là, il y a des milliers et des milliers de romans, d'ouvrages, dont le fond est à la fois le paternalisme et le mépris sur fond de racialisme. Et on voit ça aussi dans le cinéma d'une certaine époque.
So can be seen in movies of a certain age.
Mais un individu qui ne se prend pas au sérieux et qui raconte une histoire dans un pays dont il ne comprend pas les mœurs et où il est perdu, et c'est lui qui est l'objet du comique. Et là, ça dérange personne.
But for a character who is in a country who doesn't understand the country, then he becomes the subject of love after, so it doesn't disturb anyone.
Il y a un moment, je ne sais plus de quel pays, EPP, d'un pays de l'Est. EPP, ça vous dit quelque chose?
There's a novel
C'est un EPP. Un type qui est invité pour un colloque dans un pays de l'Est.
So it's a character who is invited in a country of the East for
Mais il s'est trompé
a
d'avion.
conference, but he took the wrong plane.
Il s'est trompé d'avion. Et il s'est trompé dans les couloirs. Tout d'un coup, il se retrouve dans un pays où il ne comprend rien
So
de rien.
all of a sudden he's in a country where he doesn't
Rien, pas un
understand
mot.
anything about
Et il va
what's
être,
going on. Not a word.
il va être dans une situation complètement absurde où tous les comportements, tout ce qui peut se dire, il ne comprend pas.
So he finds himself in an absurd situation where whatever people say, what's happening around him, is lost.
Le seul repère qu'il a, c'est une femme qui lui dit EPP.
The only connection he has, it's a woman who tells him EPP.
Avec ce seul mot, il va essayer de comprendre un peu quelque chose.
With only this word, he'll try to understand what's going on.
On peut aller plus loin.
You can go further.
On peut aller plus loin.
You can go further.
Peut-être personne ne comprend le français ici.
Maybe nobody understands
Eh
French.
bien, imaginez que tout ce que j'ai raconté, elle a dit.
But imagine that
Que
whatever I'm saying,
ma traductrice,
she's making it
elle a
up.
dit rien de ce que j'ai dit
My
depuis le moment.
translator is making
Elle
it
dit
up.
toutes des choses tout à fait différentes qui n'ont rien à voir avec ce que je dis.
Saying something completely different.
Comment
with
vous le
what I'm saying.
saurez, vous?
How would you know?
Et moi, comment je le
And
saurais?
me.
Very good. Sorry, it was imagine if what he was saying, if the translator was making everything up.
Doesn't mean it.
Yeah. Okay, another question here, and can we just keep it to maybe one panelist per answer, just because we've got limited time?
Yeah, so the question is, so when you talk about a writer writing about a different culture, so we genuinely, naturally, we all form our own personal biases. So how as a writer, writing about a different culture, keeping in mind that reader is very universal, how do you balance between your own personal biasness and leaving it to the readers to form their own perception? Or do you guys keep that in mind, we're going to have our own personal biases and you can apply it? So how do you balance that out?
Okay.
Thank you.
Why don't you want to take that one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Again, it's how to balance the personal.
Yeah, you have generally you will have your own personal biases of that particular culture, and you're also writing a book. And so I'm asking how do you balance as a writer your own personal biases in your text, and also leaving it for the readers to decide and form their own perception about the culture.
But that's the thing that I don't pretend to give an objective, absolute, conclusive view on India. My book is biased. It's very biased. It's so biased that nobody can think that I'm trying to give an objective, complete, absolute view on India. I mean, it's what happens to my character is so it's so exaggerated. His anger towards backpackers and towards Delhi or towards Agra, that, you know, he's the problem. I mean, he's not like traveling like the journeys of Darwin in South America, or even as in Naipaul's book, India, A Million Mutinies Now, trying to give a view on India. It's a journal, and from the beginning is saying, this is what I'm experiencing. It's absolutely biased. And that's, I think, what readers appreciate. Because if you want an objective view, you can find it somewhere else. It's about the internal experience. And that's why, like, what I get the most about this trip to India, even hearing what Gabi's saying about her book, is that I should not be afraid of having this book published in India, because they're gonna understand that it's a biased view of India, of someone that is in pain, that it's feeling bad, and it's not getting what's really going on in India, and by the end, something changes.
So that was a great answer. I know I was keeping it to one person, but I just want to add something. I think that's a novel by its very essence. It cannot be objective, right? It's a subjective experience, and also that as authors we have a separation between our characters and ourselves. We're not our characters, okay? So I think with both of your work, you gave yourself the license to write these unlikable characters sometimes, but they're not you, or are they you? Okay, quickly.
Really quickly. When you asked about objective and non-objective things, I just remembered the scene in my book where the three characters, they come into a mall in Kuala Lumpur and they see that there's a parking that is called halal parking. And they just look at it really surprised and they're like, what do they mean that it's halal? Is it like no drunk people alive? Or are there like basically no pork transported through this area? Or maybe it's like if we eat pork then we're not allowed in this halal. So we just stand there and we talk about it, and in a way it's very subjective reality on how they interact, but this halal parking really exists. And I talk to my friends and they are as confused about it as everyone else. So I think it's that interaction and play and making jokes, as Juan said, it's really subjective.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Are there any other questions?
Et puis un écrivain, un écrivain, il n'écrit pas. Je laisse parler le monsieur.
We have one more question.
Neil, maybe you can. What about somebody like Rudyard Kipling? You know, Rudyard Kipling, who wrote in a colonial era, an Englishman. Kipling.
Sorry, yes, my ears are not very good.
Yeah,
apologies.
Pronunciation. Yeah. Kipling wrote in a colonial era.
Yes.
Wrote about India. It worked both ways. He had a certain view on India.
He certainly did. Yeah.
The exotic and the brave British soldier and all, but also, you know, at the time he was writing, he sort of opened up India to, you know, probably one of the first writers in English to sort of, you know, bring out India, the exoticism, the things. So, how do you place him?
I mean, that's an interesting one, because I think this gets back to what Rowie was saying about ethics and the importance of staying true to yourself. Now, Kipling was of his time, right? Colonial India. He was a colonialist, and he painted the Indians in a very bad light. And I mean, I personally think it's pretty disgusting, but and I don't know. It was a message that's getting out into the world, sure. But sometimes the message isn't that great, you know. It doesn't mean that people should be, I don't think people should be hobbled or stopped from telling like whatever warts and all story, but I don't know, there's some things that I find they're a little bit distasteful in this particular time, and probably looking back even then.
Il y avait une ambivalence. Il y avait les deux. Il y a ces deux aspects.
It was ambivalent, these two aspects.
Il y a les deux aspects. Et pour revenir à tout à l'heure, un écrivain, un romancier, c'est pas un historien.
And to come back on the topic, a writer is not a historian.
C'est pas un sociologue.
He's not a sociologue.
Et puis c'est surtout pas quelqu'un qui veut faire plaisir au lecteur.
And it's not someone who wants to please the reader.
On dit un peu de manière exagérée qu'un romancier, un écrivain, il doit s'inventer ses lecteurs. Il doit inventer ses lecteurs.
The writer has to invent his readers.
Il ne doit pas rester avec l'état d'esprit que peut avoir le lecteur avec ses lectures du jour, puisque la littérature elle est toujours en action, en activité. Elle s'invente elle-même en permanence. Et si on écrivait toujours le même roman, ce serait
And he should not be in the same line as the reader's state of mind. Well,
et d'ailleurs, c'est très intéressant parce que tous les romans qui ont beaucoup plu, qui ont fait des best-sellers,
all the bestsellers,
on les trouve maintenant à 5 roupies dans les caisses à Paris, partout.
In Paris, everywhere, you find them for very cheap.
Pourquoi? Parce que ça parlait au lecteur du jour.
Because it was talking to people.
Mais comme il n'y avait pas vraiment d'art,
But since there was no art,
c'est devenu illisible. C'est devenu, personne ne peut plus lire ça.
Many cannot be read anymore.
Et tel autre écrivain, eh bien, personne ne le lisait.
And another writer,
pour prendre un exemple
nobody was reading him,
France,
like in France.
Stendhal.
Stendhal
est un grand romancier. Il y a Flaubert,
He's a big novelist like Flaubert, Stendhal.
Stendhal, eh bien, on ne le lisait pas. On disait, mais
nobody was reading
on ne lisait
him.
pas, on ne comprenait pas ce qu'il voulait dire, on trouvait
Nobody
ça
understood.
pas sérieux.
It was not taken serious.
Lui-même, il était conscient. Il dit, j'ai 100 lecteurs. Mes lecteurs, j'aurai mes lecteurs dans 20 ans.
But
et 20 ans plus tard,
I'll meet my reader in 20 years time. 20 years later, he met his public.
On n'écrit pas pour plaire.
So we don't try to please.
Parce que plaire, c'est se démoder.
So if you want to please, you become unfashioned. You become obsolete.
Et on n'écrit pas non plus pour les honneurs.
And you don't write.
Parce qu'il n'y a rien de plus déshonorant que les honneurs.
You don't try to be glorified for the medals.
That is true. But back to the Kipling question. I think it differs to what you were talking about. Your characters obviously deeply flawed and were making comments that were offensive. The reader knows they're offensive, right? The reader would know they're offensive. That these comments are offensive about India or Malaysia. With Kipling, I think it's so woven in, the colonial message that it's not understood by the reader. Now it is, but then it wasn't understood that it was offensive.
Kim, nobody thought was offensive in England at that time.
No. I mean, I imagine as an Indian who could read in English at the time, it would be deeply offensive. So I think that's I still think he must have known. Like there's some certain liberties you can take with or excuses you can make for history, but that's, I don't know, it's a pretty big one.
Il y a de magnifiques exceptions comme Faulkner, William Faulkner, qui était sudiste, qui avait toute la mentalité du sudiste, et personne n'a parlé des Noirs, des Afro-Américains comme lui, avec une telle humanité.
Faulkner was a sudist. We have few exceptions like Faulkner, who was a sudist, and nobody could write as well as him about the atrocities that were done to black people with the humanity.
Just to give an example, the quote that my book has in the start, it's a saying from Thailand.
Saying from?
Thailand. from all the Indochina Peninsula. The saying says, it's also quoted by B.S. Naipaul in his book India, A Million Mutinies Now. If you ever see in the wood an Indian and a snake, the first thing you should do is kill the Indian. But that speaks more about Thailand than of India. It's like, yeah, well, maybe people in Thailand don't like Indians. I put that quote because I need to take distance from all the people in Argentina who praise India all the time, and to prepare the reader to okay, this is not gonna be easy on India or Indians. But I think that this joke or this saying that says more about Thai people than Indians.
Just one more.
Sorry, and actually this saying is a variation of an Indian saying against Brahmins. The original saying was, if you see a Brahmin and a snake in the wood, kill first the Brahmin.
V.S. Naipaul, you know, so many cross cultures he's written about, Black Africa, India, Argentina, but also, yes, he's got a very fixed viewpoint, but he also, I think, he demystifies India. You see, there's a lot of India, especially this, you said about Argentina, there's this sense of exotic country, it's not always so exotic. So Naipaul, in a way, both pitfalls and pleasure, I mean, he does help to demystify both post-colonial Africa, that it wasn't all glorious when they got independence. There was dictatorship. There was, lots of taboos and witchcraft and things like that. But I think Naipaul serves a purpose in his own way, however much he's looked upon. Of course, he's a great writer. The prose is phenomenal. I mean, he's a master craftsman. But don't you think some things like that, he's got a subtle humor also, without necessarily meaning that, doesn't he demystify all these, deconstruct all these societies?
Of course. I traveled through India with a million mutinies now in my backpack. And I was actually I was reading Naipaul to every backpacker around me, trying to say like, stop enjoying so much, stop being so happy about everything. Like, there's so much about India you don't know. I was particularly annoyed about the backpackers talking about ahimsa and non-violence and saying, oh, only a country like India could achieve independence through non-violence. And then I started speaking about partition and the massacres that happened during it's not like India is, what we talked in the last session, India is both things. It's ahimsa and it's the killings in the partition. I mean, it's everything, but I was surrounded by this biased view on India as a peaceful country, as a wise country, that I needed to take, at least for a part in the book, a stand on the other side. But yeah, going to your question, of course, it helps to demystify and it gives another point of view, another perspective.
I think Amarnath put it really well in the session we did this morning, saying that India is very complex and it's all things, yeah. So I think to get that perspective, you need someone. V.S. Naipaul, he presents his view of this thing, and they were saying Amarnath knew him personally and was saying he was a curmudgeon, right? But obviously a great writer too. So, and with a great mind. And I don't think, I also was saying in my first trip to India, took a million mutinies now, thinking it would be some light travelogue, and it did open my mind up and made me look at the country in a different way. Yeah? So it's not all about, I don't know, marigolds and, whatever, pujas, and it is about that, but it's about a lot of other things too. Yeah, sure.
One last thing I want to say about all those backpackers, even the Argentinian backpackers that were with me in that trip, dreaming of wise India, never came back. And I'm here with my wife and my kid. Not only for Justice Festival, I'm staying for a whole month. And so, like, I think that in the end, if you want a long-lasting relationship with a human or a country, you better be honest.
Something else to wrap up? No? You're all good? Well, I think that's actually a great place to end, I think. It's been a really lively discussion. I appreciate it. Thank you, guys. And thank you to the translation too. It's even though you were saying something completely different. And thank you for coming. I know it's quite warm and some great questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I conclude the session, I would like to quote that investment, reading and learning can never be a waste. On that note, I would like to extend my gratitude to all the authors for gracing this event and sharing their inspirational spiritual stories and precious knowledge with different shades of literature with us, with a hope to grace you another year for the literary festival. I extend my heartiest thank you to all of you. Thank you audience for your involvement and willingness to learn. Last but not the least, our volunteers and technicians who has contributed in carrying out the session successfully. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening and a good stay in Guwahati. Thank you.